Hey everybody, so the whole video is not going to be in phone quality camera. I just wanted to preface this video with a little disclaimer. I am actually editing this video on October 11th. It's Columbus Day today. And this video that I have recorded for you guys that I'm editing right now, I recorded back in August after I got back from my backpacking trip. And yes, there is a reason why I've been so delayed with uploading all of these videos from the backpacking trip, and we will get to that. If I don't bring it up in this video, it's going to come up in the next video. It kind of just giving y'all guys a little bit of an explanation why it's taken me this long to get these videos posted. I actually went on my backpacking trip on like August 13th-ish through August 22nd, and I have been back from my trip for like a month and a half, and I'm still getting these videos uploaded. But I promise you guys, I am going to get back in and start producing more content and editing a little bit faster here in the future. I have been going through a lot of personal things, and we'll get to that later. So just letting y'all know, when y'all see an August something garden tour going on, yes, you're at the right video. This is a new video. I just wanted to make sure I'm posting everything as chronologically as possible. And now I'm getting back into it, and I'm going to pump out a lot of videos here really quick. So hang on, hang tight. We'll get back in this. Hi friends, welcome back to Reach and Reverie. I have been back home in Western Texas for about a week now. If y'all are new to my channel or maybe just missed a couple episodes, let me catch you up. I flew from here, Western Texas, all the way to North Carolina to go on a backpacking trip with my two sisters. I will have the link to that story right here. Now that trip was absolutely amazing. I feel like it was so needed to get that quality time with my family. And even still, I felt like it was so short. But we made the most of it, and if I have one regret, it's that I didn't record enough. I wish that I could have shared even more of that experience with you guys, and that way I would have more recorded memory of that trip. But that's alright. This video is going to be just slightly different than our usual garden tour format, in that this is going to be the last garden tour of the summer where we're going to show everything that we're growing. Because today I am planning on beginning the process of pulling out some of the summer garden so that we can make room for our fall and winter crop. All of these things in here, they are summer crops, and we do get cold enough temperatures in the winter where all of these things are going to die when the freeze comes. So I'm going to go ahead and pull some of them out today. That way I can get the things that can survive the winter started. And overall, I want today's video to just be a video honoring all of the things that I've grown, taking a look at them, and just appreciating. So right now I'm not harvesting any fruit or vegetables on this garden tour. I am going to just take you through, and we are going to look at what we've got. So what I'm going to do is we are going to walk through the garden, and I'm going to show you what's staying and what I'm going to be pulling out. And you can see, even though I've been back a week, we still have a lot of cleaning up to do. We have had some massive thunderstorms rocking our area, and look at these branches that have fallen. It's wild, right? So I have been home for a full week now from my trip, and I didn't make a garden tour before this, but I have been harvesting things out of my garden. So I'm going to leave you some photos right here, just showing some of the amazing things that I have been able to harvest since I've been back from my trip. Now I have been editing and going over the content from my backpacking trip So I didn't want to bog myself down with so much content that I wasn't going to be able to handle editing in a timely manner. So I decided to go ahead and not film a garden tour last week. When I came home, I was allowing myself to rest and recover from coming back from that amazing but physically demanding and taxing backpacking trip. So I've just been recovering, getting back into the swing of work full time, and I haven't been as devoted to my garden this week. Kind of maybe in a way, I've been mentally preparing myself for the fact that I'm going to be pulling some of this garden out today. And so I've separated myself a little bit from this garden so that I could come at it from a more neutral place, a neutral mindset, knowing that if I want my fall garden to succeed, I'm going to have to take steps now to ensure that they're set up for their best success, which means planting them now. I have a lot of things that are getting sick with powdery mildew and little different forms of blight, lots of powdery mildew. And it's an inevitable part of any gardening season where you end up getting frost. A lot of these plants will continue to live on until they either die of disease, sickness, or they die of frost. Now, I want to start by showing you guys my pepper and my basil bed. And this is going to be an interesting exception to pulling things out, because this year I'm actually not planning on pulling my peppers out. And we'll see, that might change because we have had a lot of hornworms, which I'm seeing evidence of right here. So I bet you there's a hornworm somewhere around here. I've actually been pulling off a couple of hornworms in the garden this week. You can see we have hornworm damage here, where they'll just completely decimate a plant overnight. Now I'm looking for one because I see that this plant is quite eaten. Well, do y'all see him? I grow some Pekin peppers. This is the Pekin pepper. It grows native here in the Chihuahuan Desert, and you can see this is basically how big it grows to be. Really small pepper, but the spiciest pepper I've ever tried. And they mature when they're red, and once they turn red, they'll just pop right off, and that's how you know they're ready. But this isn't a video talking about how to know when Pekins are ready. This is a video where I'm learning and experimenting off of my Pekin peppers. So Pekin peppers grow here natively, and they are frost tender. So they die back when the frost comes, but guess what? The next year they still have an intact root system. And what I typically do is, when the cooler weather goes away and the warmer weather of spring starts coming back, I cut back all of the, there it is, there's that hornworm. I'm gonna come back and get him off of here in a minute. But look, he's on my Pekin pepper. That is a tomato hornworm, you guys. Horrible for the garden. I usually pick them off and give them to the chickens, but it makes me sad because I don't like to kill anything, but these things are so destructive to the garden. Pekin peppers, they come back every year as a perennial, and all you have to do is, even though they look dead, all of the leaves fall off and their branches become woody, it's interesting in that they come back every year in the spring. So it dies back, and then I basically cut off all of the dead growth and it regrows the next year. But what's interesting is that these I started from seed this year from Pekins that I harvested on my property, and they're doing okay. They're producing pretty good. You see this? They're producing quite a few little peppers. Quite a few peppers. However, they're not as vigorous or fast growing or as productive as my Pekins that have been on the property for years. I actually have a Pekin plant that was here when we moved in, Oh my gosh, you girls. Pip. I wonder how much of that y'all got to see. So let me show you my perennial Pekin. We've had this Pekin plant since we moved onto the property. We protect it from the chickens, who will definitely eat it. Now this Pekin was here when we moved in, and we've lived here for about 4.5 years now, almost 5 years. And you can see how big and bushy and full this plant is. And that's because his root system is very established. He comes back so quick and strong every year. So I'm gonna do an experiment this season, and I'm not gonna pull out my peppers. I'm actually planning on letting my peppers sit here in this garden bed, and I'm basically just gonna let them sit and overwinter here. And of course, I'm expecting all of their leaves are gonna die, all of their green branches are gonna turn brown and woody, and in the spring I'm gonna cut back all of the vegetation that died back, and I'm gonna wait and see if any of these peppers can come back and survive. So the coldest that I have ever known this area to get to is probably around -5 degrees Fahrenheit, and the Peking peppers came back from that. So we're gonna see if some other pepper varieties can do that as well. It's gonna be an experiment. I don't know if it's gonna work, but what do I have to lose? I can go ahead and start some pepper varieties next spring from seed, and if it doesn't work, I'll plant those here. But if it does work, then I'm gonna have some peppers next year that are already started off, that are gonna have more established root systems and have the potential to be more productive and more established next year. So that's gonna be an interesting experiment if the hornworms don't eat everything, but then at the same time, I mean, they're gonna lose their vegetation anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that guy, give him to the chickens. But we're getting a little bit off track here, so let me show you this garden. So here on the end, I have the Perennial pepper. And these Perennial peppers are basically, I was growing them as a substitute for essentially a long green chili, like a hatch green chili, because we love chile rellenos. However, chile rellenos can kind of be a little bit spicy for us depending on the peppers. Sometimes those long green chilies have a bit of a kick, especially when they're grown down here in the south. They tend to be spicier. So this Perennial pepper is not spicy at all. We actually sauteed some for breakfast, but my Perennials didn't get very big. And I'm wondering if maybe it could have been a deficiency in the soil. Maybe it could have been this cooler season that we have potentially stunted the plants a little bit. There's so many different factors, but I do know that it tasted really good, and I know that they have the potential to be bigger. So I'm gonna go ahead and add those to my list to grow next year. And all I can do is succeed. You know, if you try and try again, you can learn from your failures and you can improve and become more efficient and grow from those experiences. So we're gonna grow Perennial again. I loved it. We had these today and they were so mild, wonderful flavor like a green chili, but absolutely no heat to them. Really amazing pepper. I'm growing quite a few of those. We've harvested quite a few already. And then we have, of course, my ever productive Buena Mulata. I absolutely love the Buena Mulata for its production. However, it wasn't very practical for us this year because we don't like a whole lot of spice in our food. And these Buena Mulatas were rated as a medium heat pepper, but to us, they were extraordinarily spicy. Very, very, very spicy. So I might grow them again because they're really fun and kind of novel, and we do eat them, but we just don't eat them very fast. So what I've been doing with my Buena Mulatas is I've been freezing them, and I'll take them out and maybe throw like one into a dish, and it's plenty heat. It'll make the dish really spicy. So that's what I've been doing. You can also dehydrate them, make chili powder or like crushed pepper flakes, that sort of thing. So I might play around with a couple of different ways to preserve these, but overall I don't need a whole lot of these in my garden because they're so productive, and we just don't eat them that fast because they are incredibly spicy. Really beautiful, very productive, amazing, versatile pepper. However, I have my this is the lilac bell pepper, and it looks like we're starting to get a pepper here at the end of the season. I do want to grow these again because I love the color purple, and I think that that would be a neat variety to grow, to have a purple bell pepper. Maybe they need a different location. Maybe they were just a little bit shaded out, and combined with this cooler season maybe didn't get enough sunlight, but they just weren't productive for us. Didn't get a single, I have not harvested a single pepper off of my lilac bell pepper plants yet, and we're already here towards the end of our season. I also had, or have somewhere in here, an albino bell pepper. Here we are. And I harvested one bell pepper off of this plant. Also not productive this season. However, I did grow albino bell peppers last season. Very productive. So that tells me maybe it just wasn't a year for the bell peppers. So I definitely do want to give lilac bell pepper another chance, because my proven, known productive albino bell pepper didn't perform well this year either. So nothing personal, just wasn't a bell pepper year for me. I am going to go ahead and harvest all of the basil this week. I love the smell of basil. It has gone to flower, gone to seed, and I just think that it is time for the basil to be pulled out. I'm waiting for my Peking peppers to ripen. They will turn red when they're ripened, so waiting on those. But from my experience with my ones that grow native in the yard, they typically don't turn red until mid-September and into October. So it's a late season pepper. These Pekins, they typically have one round of just produce all that the plant is going to produce, and then they're done. But they are pretty productive. I used to grow probably two or three plants. We had more growing around the yard, but the plants that we didn't protect, like we have one Peking pepper in this corner over here. And in the wild, natively, they do grow best in the shade of other trees. So this Peking pepper was also here when we moved in, and the chickens killed it. So we learned from that and protected the one near the chicken coop. But from those two plants, we were harvesting a couple cups of Pekins every season. And my favorite way to do Pekins is to make red crushed pepper flakes, or you can soak them in basically like a vinegar sauce, pickle them, and I would use like the pickles sauce, like the vinegar, and pour that over dishes to make them extraordinarily spicy. But Peking pepper, the spiciest pepper I've ever had. If you stick one of these in your mouth and bite it, you will know exactly where on your tongue that pepper was. Profoundly spicy pepper. I would estimate at least 10 times hotter than a jalapeno, at least, probably. That's just how it felt when I ate it. Over here we have my Pepperoncini Peppers, which have been extraordinarily productive this year. We have had a ton of Pepperoncini Peppers. I've been harvesting these every single week, and they have just been absolutely keeping up with that production. Ooh, looks like somebody had a tasty snack. Bet it was that hornworm. There you go, girls. So I'm gonna harvest all of these peppers this week. I have 3 Pepperoncini plants, and they have just done really well, absolutely well. I would venture to say that this season has made Pepperoncini one of my favorite peppers. Now, early in the season, it had a good kick, level spice, mild, really nice kind of low heat pepper. But as the season's gone on, they have gotten really spicy. And so I used to pick them and I would eat like 2 or 3 of them with my lunch just on the side. I would just snack on them. And now I'm not doing that anymore because they've gotten pretty spicy. So I am still making pickles and throwing some peppers in there for pickled peppers and liking them that way. On the end, I have my habanatas. Habanatas are off to a really slow start. They took a long time to give me some peppers, but now that they are producing very productive pepper, but in a different way. Like, I would say the pepperoncini was the most productive because it was consistently producing peppers from early season throughout the season. And my habanatas are very productive now, but they're almost like a one and done kind of show, just like the Pekin. So I have tons of habanatas now, but they just took a really long time to start. And you can see it looks like I'm just now getting my first one that's gonna start ripening. So these ripen to a really beautiful peachy orange color, and none of them are ripe yet. I actually do really like the habanata. This is my first time growing and trying habanata peppers. I harvested my first one about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the habanata is a habanero pepper that has been selectively produced, selectively bred to be no heat. So it has all of the really nice flavor notes of a habanero pepper, the same shape and texture, qualities of a habanero pepper, but none of the spiciness, which we really enjoyed not having a spicy pepper. And it's been interesting. The flavor profile is not what I expected, because I've had habaneros before and I liked the flavor of them, but they were really spicy. Now, when you take out the spice of a pepper, you're able to realize and appreciate flavors that you may not have even been able to know that were there because the spice would just take over. And so habanata peppers, to me, it's so interesting. They almost have like, it's a really creamy, slightly floral, very savory flavor that a lot of other peppers don't have. And I would almost compare them to a cheesiness, and that sounds interesting, like a pepper that's cheesy. That sounds gross, but they're really good. It adds a unique flavor profile to a dish that you probably couldn't get otherwise. So I like them. I like my habanatas. I'll probably grow them again and just expect that they're more of a late season pepper versus my very versatile, all around, ever-giving pepperoncini pepper. As we scoot down, we have more Pekins. I planted 2 in this bed. It's a very delicate, small pepper, and because of its delicateness, I was thinking that my other peppers would be good candidates to try to grow as perennials, test that experiment, because this one, he doesn't look very hardy. Like, look, he's very delicate, and he comes back every year. So why couldn't one of the more robust peppers do the same? So that's going to be a really neat experiment. I really love the smell of this basil, and it has changed the scent of it since I've decided to let it go to seed and flower. Now, I've said in previous videos that with basil, if you don't let it flower, if you keep picking off all of the flower buds before it's allowed to flower, then you can help your basil stay sweeter and more palatable to eat for longer in the season. With me going on my backpacking trip, which meant I was gone from here for 10 days, I knew I wasn't going to be able to keep up with keeping my basil pruned, so I decided to let it flower so that it could attract more pollinators. And I think it's done a really good job. I've noticed that my pepper production has increased dramatically since letting my basil flower. So it was a nice symbiotic relationship having the basil planted amongst my pepper plants. As we go down, I have Cayenne Pepper, which is another pepper that produced late but was very productive once it started producing. have a ton of cayenne peppers all through here. Now none of them are ripe. I think last week I harvested 2 cayenne peppers that were red. So I'm letting these stay on a little bit longer because I want to make either chili powder or like cayenne powder or potentially red crushed pepper flakes with these. As we go down, I have more of my cayenne peppers that are kind of easing this way, but behind my cayenne peppers, oh, there's a little red one. Look at him, cayenne pepper. Behind my cayenne peppers, I have Shishito Pepper. Shishito Pepper produced pretty early as well, and it has been nice and productive, and I've absolutely adored the flavor of Shishito. Shishito is another low heat pepper, and you can saute them with eggs, is really good, but my favorite way to eat Shishitos has legitimately been to just have a couple of them on the side with whatever I eat for lunch. So if I'm eating chicken salad, I'll take a pepper and bite into it and take a bite of my chicken salad, or I'll have them on the side when I make like a sandwich for lunch, or just whatever. Like, it adds a nice extra vegetable side to whatever you're eating. Very low heat, very flavorful, amazing pepper. Now over here next to my Shishitos, I have what's called a Brazilian Starfish pepper, and I have not tried any of these yet. I'm waiting for them to mature. They ripen to red, and Brazilian Starfish is reported to be a spicy pepper, a hot pepper. So I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do with these. I'm probably gonna also use them in something like red pepper flakes or crushed pepper or something, or potentially freeze them like I'm doing with my Buena Mulatas and take them out to add like a pepper or two to a stir fry is the other way to do it. I'm really excited because there are so many, like for every inch of this pepper plant is covered in peppers. So even though this again is probably a later producer on peppers, you're not going to get them early in your summer garden, they sure do make up for it, because when they show up, they bring it. Look at that. Absolutely covered with Brazilian Starfish peppers. I ordered the Brazilian Starfish not because I wanted a hot pepper, but just because of, like, look at it. Look at that novelty right there. It really is an interesting variety to add to your garden. You can see where they get their name, the starfish. It's kind of a squished, star-shaped pepper. Almost like a patty pan pepper. So, really like those. And down on the end, I have more cubanelles. Look, the starfish is all the way over here. I've been really impressed with my pepper garden this year. Over here I have my Kiku Chrysanthemum Melon, which has been very productive. I love my Chrysanthemum Melon. Absolutely love it. It has been struggling a little bit with some kind of sickness for many weeks now, but it hasn't waned in its production. I have already harvested probably 4 or 5 Kiku Chrysanthemum Melons and eaten them off of this plant, and I still have, I can already see 1, 2, 3, at least 5 more of these melons growing on. So this is a prolific melon variety, although it is a personal sized melon. These melons are, I would say, between the size of a baseball and a softball. So fairly small melons. The flesh is thin. You don't get a whole lot of volume off of the fruit that you eat. However, the flavor, very sweet, has notes of pear to it. Very, very delicious. Slightly cantaloupe flavor, but very light flavor of a melon. Very, very good. I absolutely recommend the Kiku Chrysanthemum Melon. I have more. There's one over here that's ready to harvest. And throughout my garden, I've grown the Kiku Chrysanthemum, the Tigger Melon, the Charonte Melon, the Kajari Melon. at least 4 melons I've gotten to taste from my garden this year, which is way more success than I had last year. Oh, and then we had another one that was an unidentified variety, potentially Hale's Best. So 5 different types of cantaloupe this year. And the Kiku is up there. Really good melon that I'm definitely gonna grow again. I have had so much success with melons this year that I've basically been eating melon every day for weeks now. Before my trip and then after my trip, I've basically been eating melon every single day, and I love it. Love melons. So I'm gonna grow Kiku chrysanthemum again. I'm gonna go ahead and let the rest of the fruit on this wave of production be ready to harvest, and once I harvest the next probably 5 fruits off of here, I'm gonna go ahead and pull out Mr. Kiku Chrysanthemum Melon. He's done really good, had a great run. I did save seeds from him, so he does have a legacy on this plant, but he is starting to get sick and his production is now kind of past his prime, so we're gonna go ahead and pull him out. I'm looking and I'm seeing a lot. We have the 2, and then down here there's another little one, and then there's one over there, and then more over here. So I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like we have 6 more melons on Kiku chrysanthemum to have this year. And I can also tell that he's kind of done because his fruit's getting smaller. Earlier in the season, I was harvesting the melons. Kind of like, can't hold this in my armpit. I was harvesting the melons kind of around this size, and now they're like this size. So that's a good indicator that he is kind of going out on this season. So I'm going to take him out. In this gardening space, I've been really happy with my pollinators, very much so. We've had some cosmos, the giant yellow marigold. Giant yellow marigold has just definitely been amazing to watch. He is almost 4 feet tall. I have had fennel that's doing really good, and the fennel is feeding swallowtail butterflies. This is a caterpillar I will leave in the garden. Doesn't eat my tomatoes or peppers. He eats my fennel, but turns into a beautiful butterfly. And we have another little swallowtail down there. Really beautiful caterpillar, beautiful butterfly. And my nasturtiums down here haven't been the best. I don't think this was the best place to put my nasturtiums. However, they've been hanging on. Still have nasturtiums growing down there. Have a few flowers. I had orchid cream and Alaska salmon in this bed. And my beans, I originally had planned for Kiku Chrysanthemum Melon to have this corner of the trellis, and this I completely planted full of pole beans. You don't see any pole beans, do you? This is the 2nd season in a row that I have not had very much success with pole beans. Gonna keep trying though. There's always next year, right? So across from my peppers and next to my melon, I have tomatoes, and I have summer squash and eggplant. Now summer squash I've harvested, I tried really hard with summer squash this year, and I harvested 2 squash, and I got 2 meals out of that, so I'm gonna take that as a win. I like summer squash, so I'm gonna try it again next year. I don't know why I'm not having a whole lot of success with that. I actually do think I know why. I think that we are not having good pollination. Essentially, with all of my squashes, if I haven't physically hand pollinated that flower, we're not gonna get a fruit off of it. So next year, my game plan is when I see a female flower, I'm getting in there and I'm hand pollinating it, because here, I don't know if y'all have noticed, we don't see a whole lot of bees buzzing around. It's just, there's not a whole lot of pollination. And now I went on my trip to North Carolina this past week, and I saw bees everywhere. I just saw, like, it was so crazy. And I went to my sister's garden, and she lives close to Raleigh, inland in the inner part of North Carolina, and her garden full of flies, and her garden was absolutely beautiful. And you could see that, like, just look at her tomatillos. Go back and look at her tomatillos. Tomatillos are really hard to grow because it's hard to get them to pollinate, and her garden was rocking it. She was full of fruit, and she was telling me that she has a lot of pollinators in her garden, and that's part of living in the desert, I guess. I need to attract more pollinators next year, and if I don't attract more pollinators, I need to get in and hand pollinate. Had pretty good success with my tomatoes this year. We had a good run. I would say I would say that this year was a great tomato year. My issue with the tomatoes that we dealt with this year was blossom end rot. I think we were overwatered. You can see splitting on tomatoes where they're overwatered, they split. And we had a lot of blossom end rot. And the issue with blossom end rot is usually they're deficient. They're deficient, but I've been fertilizing them pretty well, and they're not showing any signs of being over fertilized. So I think the issue is that they were overwatered by how much rain we got this year. So next year I either need to, if it's gonna rain like this again next year, I need to fertilize more, probably. Maybe space my tomatoes out a little more so that they get more nutrients per the soil that they're in. I don't know. Got some things I can look into this winter in planning for next year. The other thing we dealt with a lot with my tomatoes was this. You can see on the leaf it has a little hollow space that's brown. There's little worms that are growing in my leaves this year that we didn't deal with a whole lot of last year, and they're like everywhere on these tomato plants. This isn't blight, this is like worms. It's weird. And we have had a few tomato hornworms as well. Let me see a good example. Oh, look at this new growth. You're still kicking it, little guy. Here you can see a good example. An ugly little thing. There he is. A little worm in there. Nasty. Don't like that. But it hasn't really affected the production too much. You can see tomatoes are still really productive. I've been very happy with my tomatoes this year. I noticed that things that I liked and don't like. Let's see. So we have here, this is the snowball tomato, also known as the white beauty. Very, very delicious tomato, low acid in it, so it's good for potentially an alternative to a red tomato if you deal with heartburn. It has less acidity, so it might be easier for you to eat. However, I noticed it's not as long-lived. It doesn't store as long as a red tomato. I've noticed I'll pick these and I'll set them out on the counter, and I need to eat these first because they start to over ripen and go bad quicker. But that's been interesting. Really good flavor, but eat them quick. And then I've noticed with this is a large barred boar. I've noticed that my large barred boar have been more delicate. They bruise a little easier. They're much juicier, and they also have a thinner skin. So I've noticed these are also ones that you have to eat quick. Really beautiful, a nice rich smoky flavor. However, they've been they go bad a little quicker, so you got to eat these really quick. My Castelluto Fiorentino, which is very ribbed. There's a couple on the other side I've been very impressed with. They've stored really well. They've lasted longer on the counter because I don't refrigerate my tomatoes. I feel like once you refrigerate a tomato, it kills the flavor. So I pick these, and I usually harvest about once a week. Sometimes I'll harvest in the middle of the week, but in general I harvest these and I set them out on the counter and we grab them and go when we want to eat them. And the Costalutto Fiorentino probably lasted the best on the counter. We would save those for the end of the week because they would last really good. However, because it's fluted, because it has so much ribbing texture to the tomato, I feel like we had more waste with that variety because there would be areas that would, I don't know, they'd have like rotten spots on them. So pros and cons to a lot of different types of tomatoes. I noticed that my Get Stuffed variety, let's see, we have a Get Stuffed, I'm sure. I don't have a Get Stuffed to harvest yet, they're still green. But my Get Stuffed variety, I've liked okay, the flavor was okay, but they were really beautiful. They've had some really neat streaking on them. But the Get Stuffed variety tended to have more blossom end rot than my other varieties. But I don't know if that's a thing because I only grew one variety or one plant of the Get Stuffed, so I don't know if it was that plant or a variety thing. But I noted that. Also very productive though, look at this. I have a bunch of Get Stuffed over here that I'm waiting on harvesting. Like a bunch. There's a bunch of them over there. Look at that. So here, towards the end of the season, once those ripen, we might get some stuffed tomatoes. So far, my Get Stuffed have been ripening on the trellis. They've been ripening really small. And this little shoot that's going off to the side, they're getting much bigger and staying green. So we're gonna have some good sized stuffing tomatoes to harvest. My eggplants didn't do very good this year. I've only I've only harvested a handful of these little finger eggplant. I've probably harvested about 2 a week on average, which isn't a whole lot. Like you can add these to a side dish, but I didn't get a whole lot of production off of these. But I think it was the cool season we had. Where I live, I'm used to drought weather. We live in a desert. I'm used to hot weather. We usually get up into the 100 and teens degrees Fahrenheit, so like 115, 118 is not uncommon. We were expecting hot weather. And this year we barely got out of the 80s. Maybe we got out of the 80s, I don't even know. It's been such a cool season. And I think that the garden struggled a little bit. It got too much water and it was too cool. Our nights were in the low 60s throughout the season. That's wild. So I think that the eggplant wanted hotter weather. So we'll see. Maybe I'll put them in a sunnier spot next year as well. I think they did better over here. Last season I had them over here where it gets good sun, and this season I've had them over there, but that's all right. My Charonte melon, which is back here, was a really a crowd pleaser for me, for our family. Let's set y'all here for a minute. Hey girls. So I'm gonna walk you over here so we can see the Charonte melon. Charonte melon was my favorite melon this year, but it's really hard to tell when it's ripe by appearance. It doesn't look ripe, but you know when the Charonte melon is ripe when you walk by it and you can smell melon. That is how you know. And so this year I've harvested probably 4 melons off of this plant, and I'm gonna get another one. And we haven't had too much issue with these, but I've read the reviews and a lot of people struggle with these cracking with overwatering. And I really haven't watered this melon very much at all this year. It's basically only survived off of rainwater. And I think that's why we didn't get cracking. Now early in the season, it took a long time for the fruit to mature. Later in the season, this fruit's probably 2 weeks old and it's already almost ripe. So they're maturing a lot faster here later in the season. I also have a Moon and Stars watermelon. Look at these leaves. I love the Moon and Stars leaves. But this is my fruit. And I have 3 melons right now that are growing. that I know of. We have another one on the ground on the other side. And I'm about to harvest this one because you can see the tendril across from the watermelon is starting to dry up, and that's typically how you know when a watermelon is ripe. So I'm gonna harvest this one this week and see if we got any good melons off of him. So stay tuned for that. I think I'm gonna show y'all me cutting into this bad boy, because last year I had horrible success with watermelon. I let it sit on the vine way too long, and when I finally cut into it, it was just water on the inside of that watermelon. So we're gonna listen to nature, and when it says the tendril's dry, we're gonna pick the guy. So that's what we're gonna do this year. You can see we've had so much tomato production. I can already see dozens of tomatoes from here that are still growing. Really neat. One thing I really didn't talk about is my wall of Armenian yard-long and Kajari melons. So let's go take a look at that. I'm gonna pull out my nasturtiums this week. And then over here, I'm gonna go ahead and pull out this entire wall. Had a great run. I feel like Armenian yard-long cucumbers were one of my most productive items in the garden. Very thankful for that. That was such a surprise, as I bought that one as a whim, added it to my cart, not really planning too much for it, and it ended up just being such a good variety to add. We've made lots of pickles with my Armenian yard-long cucumbers this year. However, they really are struggling with powdery mildew, and I'm not seeing any more production. They've kind of stopped on their production. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull all of these plants out today. I'm also gonna pull out my Kajari melon. I got 2 melons off of my Kajari melon, and I feel like that was the biggest hype in the garden. I was really excited to grow Kajari melon. I was on a waiting list for almost 2 years. It was out of stock. And I follow Roots and Refuge Farm, favorite YouTube channel. I always joke with everybody that she's my best friend that I never met, because I feel like if we met each other in real life, we would be like, we're so alike in a lot of ways, and I love her. And I absolutely adore Jess. So I got the Kajari melon and added it to my garden and had so much expectation for it, and I thought it was just okay. I think the Charonte had more flavor and it was juicier, and I thought the Kiku Chrysanthemum Melon was also better flavor profile wise than my Kajari melon. But I'm gonna grow it again. Maybe it just wasn't the year in this garden. I know that flavor of plants can have a lot to do with the environment they're grown in. So maybe it just wasn't the year. Maybe we need a really hot year to get that Kajari melon up to its full potential. Mine were also really, really small. I harvested them smaller than my Kiku, and the Kiku is known to be a small melon. I think this one just didn't thrive as well as it could have. So I'm gonna grow it again. I actually have one of my 2 melons dropped down here when I was on my trip, and I came back and it was already disintegrated, but I did eat the other one and it tasted okay. It tasted kind of like a honeydew. But look at all these seeds. I'm not even gonna bother with them. I'm just gonna let them see if they're gonna volunteer next year. And I did save all of the seeds from my other Kajari melon that I ate, and I'm really happy because it was so hard to get it to germinate this year. I was down to 1 seed left in my seed pack and desperate to try to grow more. And so off of that 1 melon that I harvested and ate, I probably got at least 100 or more seeds off of that melon. So really happy that we're gonna be able to try it again next year. I also had pickle plant. It was a muncher cucumber that I'm gonna go ahead and pull out. I harvested three cucumbers off of the muncher this year, and I'm gonna make pickles with them today. So my camera died, but that gave me time to come inside and make some quick pickles really quick. Well, thank you friends for hanging out with me today in this farewell summer garden tour. There's still more to see on our channel. If you liked this video, don't forget, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, that way you can stay up to date, and I will see y'all soon.